Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Ukraine has warned of a critical situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as Russian strikes in Kharkiv injured 6 and sparked fires, as Provisional Governor Ole Hubov. A separate daytime drone attack in Dnipro has killed 1 man, injured 20, and damaged medical and residential buildings. The global Summud Flotilla attempting to deliver aid to Gaza has reported that unidentified unlit vessels approached its ports. Before departing, participants activated security protocols to prepare for a possible interception, according to media reports. A powerful 6.9 magnitude earthquake has struck the central Philippines, killing at least 60 people on Cebu Island, with officials warning the death toll could rise as rescuers search collapsed buildings. The quake has reportedly injured 147 people, damaged 22 buildings, and triggered 379 aftershocks. The U.S. Department of Justice has sued the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, accusing it of violating Second Amendment rights by delaying concealed carry licenses, with some applicants waiting for 2 years for interviews. Spotify founder Daniel Ek will step down as CEO in January to become the executive chairman, with Gustav Soderstrom and Alex Nordstrom named co-CEOs to lead the streaming giant. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has announced an 8.2% increase in the 2026 defense budget to $47.1 billion, stressing that peace requires strong security. President Lee has made the statement on Armed Forces Day, underscoring the need for enhanced self-defense. Taiwan has rejected U.S. pressure to shift half of its semiconductor production to America, with the island's lead tariff negotiator declaring it will not agree to such demands. The statement highlights rising tensions over global chip supply chains and tariff negotiations worldwide. Peruvian police have detained Lil J, the suspected mastermind behind the brutal triple femicide of Morena Verde, Brenda del Castillo, and Lara Gutierrez in Argentina, bringing total arrests in the case to 9. Argentine Security Minister Patricia Bullrich praised Peru's collaboration after the capture. According to a senior rescue official, up to 60 people have been killed and dozens injured as a 6.9 magnitude earthquake hit Cebu province in the central Philippines today on Tuesday night. Rescue operations are underway as authorities warn the death toll may rise amid widespread damage to infrastructure and power lines. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology reported that the quake struck at a depth of 5 kilometers, approximately 19 kilometers northeast of Bogo City. The tremors were also felt in many neighboring provinces in the central Philippines, as well as some regions in the southern Philippines. The Philippines sits along the Ring of Fire, a 40,000-kilometer arc of seismic fault lines around the Pacific Ocean that hosts more than half of the world's volcanoes and is prone to earthquakes. Now we move on to our next news. The Trump administration has proposed a 21-point Gaza peace plan that calls for all hostages held by Hamas to be released within 48 hours of an agreement and sets out a roadmap for Gaza once the war ends, according to a source familiar with the proposal. Meanwhile, Israel's assault in the enclave continues, with the military escalating its offensive in recent days and forcing many to flee Gaza City as the Israel Defense Forces IDF pushes deeper into the urban area. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, however, vowed to continue the war until Hamas is destroyed completely. The plan, which includes provisions for an international security force formulated by the USA and allies, as well as a phased rollback of IDF presence in the Gaza Strip, would also bar Hamas from any administrative role in Palestine, and sets no timeline for a transfer of power in Gaza from Israel to the Palestinian Authority. The U.S. blueprint also says there cannot be any forced displacement of Gaza's population. Speaking to reporters following his announcement, here's what President Donald Trump has said.
How long do you plan to give Hamas to respond to the ceasefire proposal you put out?
Well, we're going to do about 3 or 4 days. We'll see how it is. All of the Arab countries are signed up. The Muslim countries are all signed up. Israel's all signed up. We're just waiting for Hamas. And Hamas is either going to be doing it or not. And if it's not, it's going to be a very sad end.
And is there a deadline, Mr. President? Is there room to negotiate, or is this a take it or leave it deal? Is there room to negotiate with Hamas, or is this a take it or leave it deal?
You know, with Hamas, we want very simple. We want the hostages back immediately. And we want some good behavior. And, you know, it's pretty simple. You don't get simpler. Think of it. We've signed every country in the Middle East. This is like an impossible thing. It's never been done before. This is more than Gaza. Gaza was big stuff. But Gaza is a piece of it.
Now, President Donald Trump also spoke about what will happen if Hamas rejects the deal.
And if they reject the deal, you said that Israel has your backing to do whatever they need to do. What do you envision that?
I will let them go and do what they have to do. They can do it pretty easily. I would let them go and do what they have to do. You know, we've killed about 25,000 Hamas. So certainly they paid a big price for October 7th. And this is a whole new group. You know, they come in and they come in and they keep coming. But this is a whole different group. And their leadership has been killed 3 different times. So they paid a big price. We hope that they're going to have a nice, calm life. Maybe it won't happen, but if it does, it'll be one of the greatest things ever to happen. We'll have actual peace in the Middle East.
Now for this discussion, we're joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratna. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Singapore. Thank you, Professor, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, what do we know about the key elements from this Trump's proposed Gaza peace plan? And how has, so far, if we know anything about how is it received by Palestinian leadership?
It's very good to see you, Asuma. There are 3 phases to this proposal. First is what is called the demilitarization phase, where Hamas will release the hostages, both the living and the fallen. Second is that Israeli forces will gradually withdraw from the Gaza Strip, and of course there will be redevelopment of Gaza. Right now, the Europeans have agreed to it, the Commonwealth countries have agreed to it, the Commonwealth leaders, and also the Arab governments and a number of Muslim governments, where the challenge is for Hamas to agree. And of course, President Trump, in his inimitable style, has threatened Hamas that they will have to pay a very heavy price if they don't agree. But I personally believe that this proposal is unlikely to succeed in the short term. It is because they need more time. It's not only Hamas. There is the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and there are another half a dozen threat groups. And they all have to agree to this proposal. If they don't agree, certainly there can be violations, and again insecurity can return. So what is so important is to negotiate, to consult, to have a discussion on this proposal, and for there to be more time so that permanent peace can be established in Gaza. Only if that can be done, then there will be peace in the Middle East.
And what do you think about this very open-ended plan of having no particular date set for a transfer of power from Israeli government to Palestinian Authority?
The proposal itself does not have any timelines except for what President Trump said. He said he's going to give 3 or 4 days for Hamas to decide. And of course, right now, the Qatari, Egyptian, and the Turkish intelligence services are meeting with Hamas. But because there is no timeline, that may also be an advantage, because the process of negotiation will take time. You cannot fix definite timelines. But there are 3 phases. One is the demilitarization phase, the de-radicalization phase, and of course the redevelopment phase of the Gaza Strip.
Right. Thank you, Professor, for sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. The global Summud Flotilla has entered the most dangerous leg of its journey towards Gaza, now nearing the site where the previous flotilla was attacked by Israeli forces. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has urged the flotilla to accept a compromise and drop off the aid at a port from where it can be delivered to Gazans. A plea so far ignored by the participants and leaders of the global Summud flotilla, as the 47-boat strong flotilla draws closer to Gaza. It is presently crossing the area where the previous flotilla was attacked and forced to abandon their mission of delivering aid to Gaza in person. Now, we're joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratna. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Singapore. Thank you, Professor, for staying with us. Now, why did Italy withdraw in such a urgent, or it seems like this is the phase where they need the protection the most? And is there any other country that's still protecting this flotilla?
Italy is subjected to a lot of domestic pressure, because there are pressure groups in Italy that has done so many protests and demonstrations, and some of them have turned very violent. But Italy also realizes that these flotillas are not going to make Israel stop their operations, because Hamas did mount a very brutal attack in 2023, October 7th, and unless Hamas is dismantled or Hamas releases the hostages and disarms, there will be no peace. The Italians have come to reality that there is no real positive outcome either for regional or global peace by joining that flotilla.
And what do you think, don't you think that it can still maybe raise awareness about the situation, and also knowing that Greta Thunberg is also in this flotilla? Do you think that they can maybe make some effects or some kind of recognition about the situation and raise awareness still may have some consequences?
Asuma, the main purpose of the flotilla is to, as you said, to raise awareness and also to deliver relief and other supplies. But there is enough relief supplies going into Gaza. The problem is one of distribution, because Hamas is controlling the distribution of aid, food, and other items. So governments that are aware of the real situation, governments that do not want to play politics, they do not want to participate in this flotilla. But some governments are under very significant pressure from their constituencies to participate in the flotilla. What is so important is to work in consultation with Israel, with the United States, with the Arab governments, and of course with the Commonwealth governments. There must be greater cooperation, coordination and collaboration and partnership rather than conflict and confrontation. This flotilla is one that is leading to a conflict and a confrontation, and governments should stop it, because if they don't, there will be another fight.
Right. And Professor, looking further, I would like to also acknowledge that the visuals we're showing now are the live footages coming in from the flotillas itself. And Professor, looking at this, both our discussions from today, what are the potential regional and international consequences if Hamas again rejects Trump's Gaza plan?
Israel has received very significant assistance from the United States to fight Hamas and other terrorist groups that are operating in Gaza. Certainly that level of assistance, cooperation, collaboration will increase. It's not only the United States, but other countries will also assist Israel in the fight against Hamas and other terrorist groups.
With that, I would like to thank Professor Rohan Ganaratna for joining us and sharing your insight throughout our news from Singapore. Now we move on to our next news. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has warned that the situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is critical, as the facility has been without power for 7 days. As per reports, one of the diesel generators providing emergency power to the plant is no longer working. It is also the 10th time since the start of the war that the plant, the largest in Europe, has been disconnected from the power grid. Let's listen into what President Zelenskyy has said.
Вже 7-й день, і раніше, до речі, не було такого аварійна ситуація на Запорізькій атомній станції. Ситуація критична. Через російські обстріли станція відключена від живлення, від електромережі. Забезпечується електрикою від дизель-генераторів. Це надзвичайно. Генератори і станція не розраховані на таке і ніколи не працювали в такому режимі так довго. І вже у нас є інформація, що один з генераторів, зараз в Дніпрі ще тривають роботи після удару російських дронів. Удар був цілеспрямований по центру міста. На жаль, постраждали люди. Загалом весь день для східних регіонів Харків, Дніпровщина, також наша Сумщина, Чернігівщина – це фактично постійні повітряні загрози. Харків був під ударом. На Чернігівщині був удар по підстанції, зараз триває відновлення. На Сумщині в ніч на цей день росіяни вбили цілу родину. Просто вбили в будинку. Жінка, чоловік, 2 маленьких дітей, 4-7 років діткам було. Жінка була вагітна. Удар російського дрону. Мої співчуття рідним та близьким, ми обов'язково відповімо Росію на їхні удари.
Meanwhile, Russia on Tuesday has launched a rare daytime drone attack on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, killing 1 man, injuring 20 other people, and damaging medical facilities as well as residential and office buildings. Serhiy Lysak, the regional governor of Dnipro, has said that the attack targeted the center of the industrial city at a time when people were at work and children were in schools. Let's listen into what one of the residents has said.
Я зайшла додому, прийшов кот, накормила кота, прилягла, я працюю кондуктором у трамваї. Прийшла. Перший був не дуже, а вторий я вже бачила, як воно летить, такий спалах і гучно, ми перелякалися, і кот, і я, і взагалі до сих пор труси. А потім побачили вже дим, вийшло до калітки, а там палає машина, і все, це було дуже лячно. Ми не знаємо, у нас тут все було, а тут мешканці відлітали, це було жахіття.
Now for this discussion, we're joined by Shruti Das Gupta. She's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Shruti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this news coming in, what are the potential risks to Ukrainians as well as Europeans if the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant remains without power or suffers a failure of its backup systems moving forward? As we know that Ukraine, as well as some countries over there, are extremely cold in the coming months.
Greetings, Asuma. Thank you so much for inviting me. The Zaporizhzhia plant has been under Russian occupation since 2022, and all its 6 plants have been shut down. So the plant does not supply energy to anybody, not Ukraine, not Russia, nobody. The emergency power supplies are kept on only so that the uranium inside it, the radioactive material doesn't start disintegrating and the plant doesn't turn into a nuclear bomb on its own. So for that, the graphite rods, the other safety equipment, they need to be powered. Since the power plant itself is not generating any electricity, external supply is given to it via power supply lines and other means, so that these emergency situations keep the radioactive material in the stable state. So now that we understand that this power supply, power plant was not supplying any electricity, we need to understand why Ukraine is raising a red flag over this. It is because even as of last week, the IAEA themselves, who have monitors there on the plant, at the site of the plant, have been saying that because of the attacks that have been happening, the supply lines that was coming, I think the latest one, which was about 1.5 kilometers away from the plant, the Russian attack, ended up severing the supply lines and disturbing the power supply that was keeping the plants and its radioactive materials stable. Now, the last line of defense has kicked in, which is the diesel power generators that they have kicked in, and that would result in when they are supposed to be absolutely bare emergency. There have been about 10 times, I think you've covered that in your report, there have been 10 times since this entire war that the Zaporizhzhia plant has become a point of contention, a critical place. So if those generators are not stocked, they are not kept with diesel supply, continuous diesel supply till the time the electricity line is repaired, the plant itself could go into radiation leaks, which would be like a Chernobyl kind of situation, where a large section of land, people would be exposed to nuclear radiation, and we would see a huge loss to humanity. So this is exactly the reason why this plant has been flagged by IAEA and now Zelenskyy. He's saying that the Russian attacks are not enabling the repair of the line. The IAEA has asked both sides to at least consider the benefit of humanity and continue the plant in stable state, whether it is functioning as a nuclear plant or not. So these are the demands and the kinds of crisis the Zaporizhzhia plant is facing, and this is the reason why Ukraine is asking for international actors to step up and ask Putin and his forces to refrain from attacking till the time they repair their supply lines. Now, Russia on its side is saying they are not hampering any work. Ukraine is using this particular rhetoric to try and frame Russia as a villainous aggressor rather than a reasonable force which is asking to protect its own national sovereignty by disabling Ukraine's military infrastructure and enabling the non-compliance of NATO of Ukraine. So these are, apart from the political situation, there is a narrative twisting happening from both sides. The IAEA says the plant is critical because the diesel supply line, the diesel power generators are the last line and they are acting as of now.
And Shruti, since you've mentioned the international institution, what role should and can these international institutions like IAEA play in mitigating risks posed by these ongoing hostilities from both sides on both countries? And are they, do you think, still equipped to handle such crises in the context of modern warfare?
The IAEA can only act as a guard of the nuclear equipment that is placed, whether it is a military infrastructure, whether it is an enriching plant, or whether it is a nuclear plant. Their job is to alert the world and the powers, the geopolitical powers, of any foul play that might happen. Because any kind of Chernobyl like action or a nuclear explosion happening would not just damage Ukraine, it would damage generations of humanity. It is very devastating. So their job is to raise red flags. And they're doing that. They've done that with Iran conflict as such. They have done they've played a similar role with the Ukraine conflict, they have kept both sides aware of how far their military actions are damaging the functioning of the plant, or at least the security of the plants. Ukraine has, I think, 6 or 4 of these reactors, and they are keeping everybody aware of the current day situation. They are unable to actually physically go and make any protective gestures. Their job is only to work as a watchdog, and that is what they are doing. So for currently, they're trying to keep both sides aware and on even keel as far as the general benefit of humanity is there. But what happens here on 4th comes from the external power sources that are connected to this fight. Everybody has to come down and sit on the table and measure whether what they're doing for the world and for themselves is beneficial or wrong. How far is too far? Which point can be used as a pressure point? Whether a nuclear reactor on its own can be turned into a narrative warfare or an actual pressure point for Ukraine is something that all the players, everybody who's a stakeholder in this war should consider before they go on forth and make any accusations or any further actions. So IAEA is doing its role. It is telling everybody in black and white what the situation is. Now the ball is in the courts of people who want NATO in Ukraine, and the Ukrainian leader himself, and Putin.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Shruti Dasgupta for joining us and sharing that insight as an international affairs expert. Always great learning from you. Now we move on to our next news. The U.S. government has barreled towards its first shutdown in 6 years, with fundings expiring at midnight after the Democrats fought a war of words with President Donald Trump and senators rejected a last-ditch bid to keep the lights on. Republican leader John Tooney has said that the far-left interest groups and far-left Democrat members wanted a shutdown with the president. The leaders of both Republican and Democrats have also reacted to the situation. Let's listen into what they have said.
We didn't ask Democrats to swallow any new Republican policies. We didn't add partisan riders. We simply asked Democrats to extend existing funding levels to allow the Senate to continue the bipartisan appropriations work that we started. And Senate Democrats said no. Why? Because far-left interest groups and far-left Democrat members wanted a showdown with the president.
But the cracks in the Democrats are already showing. When we had a vote on our proposal to keep the government open, the clean CR, right before the recess, we had 1 Democrat vote. Tonight we had 3. So the cracks are beginning to show there is bipartisan support for keeping the government open in spite of the fact that Chuck Schumer is forcing a government shutdown, regardless of the cost, regardless of the consequences to the American people. This truly is a Democrat-owned, Chuck Schumer-owned.
Now, why do we care so much about them negotiating with us? It's not a point of pride. It's because Americans are hurting with higher costs throughout the country. Some of it's tariffs, some of it's energy costs, some of it's food costs. But one of the main reasons, and the one with the most immediate impact on raising Americans' costs, is skyrocketing costs of health care, all done by the Republicans.
Now, according to reports, the U.S. senators have voted against the stopgap Republican funding fix to keep the government open beyond midnight, putting the nation on the path to a damaging federal shutdown. President Donald Trump has warned that a potential government shutdown could be used to cut programs and benefits supported by Democrats, praising Budget Cut Director Russell Vought for his ability to reduce spending. He has also said that the U.S. government would probably see its first shutdown in more than 6 years, with funding expiring at midnight and no breakthrough in sight in acrimonious negotiations between Democrats and Republicans. Now we look back at Asia. Parents and rescuers in Indonesia are desperately searching for dozens of teenage boys believed to be trapped a day after the collapse of an Islamic boarding school, which has already left 3 dead. Authorities have said that 91 people are listed as missing after the Al-Khuzini school building collapsed while pupils held late afternoon prayers in a mosque, housed on a lower floor of a building whose upper floors were under construction. Local media has stated that rescuers have detected signs of life beneath the debris. According to reports, so far 99 children and workers at the school have been accounted for. The building collapsed after its foundation pillars failed to support the weight of new construction on the 4th floor of the school, according to National Agency for Disaster Countermeasure spokesperson Abdul Muharri. He has called for stricter safety standards and urged the public and buildings managers to oversee construction processes more carefully to prevent similar incidents. This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.